there. I'm Liz from the Amy Van Andel branch of Kent District Library.
And I'm Lisa, and I am from the Comstock Park branch of Kent District Library. And we're going to talk to you today about middle grade books, middle grade fiction. I think Liz is going to start with a great one.
Okay.
So buckle up. It's going to be good.
Okay, the first book I have to share with you is called Maya and the Robot by Eve L. Ewing. Now, Maya is in 5th grade, and she's just starting out the school year, and things are not going well. She is not with her friends who she's been in class with since kindergarten. She has the mean teacher, and her friends have the cool teacher, which is a major bummer. And on the first day, the teacher calls her Patricia, which is her first name, but she goes by Maya. And Maya's too embarrassed and shy to correct her. So now everybody's calling her Patricia, even though her name's really Maya. Things are not going great, but Maya starts volunteering in the neighborhood store, and she finds in the back room a robot that the shopkeeper's son had made years and years ago. And he left the instructions on how to bring it back to life. So Maya is really good at science and math, and she knows she can figure out how to bring this robot back to life. So she does. And all of a sudden, she has a robot named Ralph to help her around the house and to do chores and to help her mom take care of her little brother. It's amazing. Can you imagine having your own robot to do chores for you?
No.
I want a robot to do chores for me. So nothing could go wrong, right? With a robot that she programmed herself. Sometimes things go wrong. I love this book so much. I listened to the audiobook and the narration was fantastic. Although, if you get the print book, there are illustrations that you would miss if you were listening to it. So either one was great, but the illustrations are really cute and they add a lot to the story. So if you like STEM, you like a funny kind of a school story, I would highly recommend Maya and the Robot. It's available in print, in ebook, and e-audiobook. Maya and the Robot. Over to you, Lisa.
Dun, dun, dun. I feel like this is a perfect segue into Maybe Marisol Rainey, written and illustrated by Erin and Trada Kelly. And I love this. I read in the notes at the end, Liz, that she had liked drawing, the author, but she'd never really illustrated anything before. And when she wrote this book, she decided she would be the illustrator. So it's fun. There's pictures all throughout it. And it's nice that the author also illustrated for the first time. In this book, the first character we meet is Peppina. You see all the leaves on here? Peppina is a tree. We also meet a refrigerator named Buster Keaton and a cat named Jellybean. And obviously Marisol Rainey, maybe Marisol Rainey. Marisol Rainey is a little bit of a nervous girl. She worries a lot. She always thinks this could happen, maybe, but maybe not. Some of you might relate to that. I feel like when I read this book, it made me think in school, a lot of times you talk about the power of yet. You can't do something yet. It's not that you can't do it. You just can't do it yet. Marisol Rainey has a lot of these experiences in her new town. In her backyard, her tree, Peppina, is the best climbing tree in the entire world. And everyone climbs it except for her. And that makes her feel pretty bad. And she just worries about falling and what could happen. Throughout the book, we watch Marisol taking on more, thinking less about the things she can't do and giving small things tries and how she can do them. Some of you might relate to her dad he's an electrician on an oil rig. And so instead of having her dad right there in the house with her, she talks to her dad on the computer. She calls him Dad Head on the computer. So her and her brother and mom talk to him when he Skypes in. There are so many great things about Marisol that I think so many of you would relate to. She's great. You should check her out and read her, and you will especially enjoy her naming of inanimate objects. She loves to name things like her refrigerator, her stuffed animals, and maybe some of you out there do that too. So check out Maybe Marisol Rainey, published by Green Willow Books.
I loved that book. I read that book too, Lisa, and I loved it.
I keep recommending it to people.
It's so good. It's a feel good. If you need a feel good, and sometimes you do.
Yes, yes.
Okay, the next book I have to share is called Alone by Megan E. Freeman. Alone is about 12-year-old Maddie who does a secret sleepover in the beginning of the book. So her mom and dad live apart. So she tells mom that she's going to dad's house and dad that she's going to mom's house. And she has the secret sleepover with her friends at her grandparents' apartment, who are snowbirds. If you know what that means, they live in one part of the country in the winter and another part in the summer. So they're not living in this apartment. So she has this great plan that she's going to have a secret sleepover with her friends. But then at the last minute, her friends all bail and say, I can't come to your sleepover. So what does she do? She goes to the sleepover at the apartment just by herself. So nobody knows she's there. And in the middle of the night, there's some kind of catastrophic event and her whole town is evacuated. She wakes up and everybody is gone. And nobody knows where she is because the mom thinks she's with the dad thinks she's with the mom. Nobody can call on their phones because the cell service is down. It is really scary. It's a very scary feeling. So what is Maddie going to do? Maddie ends up living alone for several years.
I can't believe it.
Can you imagine?
No.
So if you like a survival story, I love survival stories. I really do. I would highly recommend this. It's really exciting. It's kind of a thinker. Like, what would you do? She goes to the library a lot and she finds books on how to do things because she's 12. She doesn't really know how to do things on her own, like fix things in her house. She finds a dog to keep her company and she relies a lot on that companionship. This novel is written in verse, so really short pages, not a lot of words on the page. So if you like a novel in verse, you'll probably fly through this one. I couldn't put it down. It was so good. It was a thought-provoking one, though. She gets very, very lonesome. So I maybe would recommend it to older kids because that's something that she really struggles with, like a hopeless feeling sometimes because she doesn't know where everybody went. Everybody's gone. So it's a thinker. It's a good one. I would highly recommend it. It's only available in print right now, but I would recommend Alone by Megan E. Freeman.
I love books in verse.
I do too. I get really excited because I know I'm going to read it fast.
Yeah. Plus it really narrows down that text. I really like it.
I go through them so fast.
Yeah. Well, my next book is Willadine by Katherine Applegate. It was published by an imprint of Macmillan, and I just finished this one yesterday. And I'm very excited to tell you about it. It's fresh. So fresh. I feel like this author, Katherine Applegate, she doesn't really have an exact thing. You don't know exactly what to expect. Her books kind of go out like different directions. She wrote the one and only Ivan and Crenshaw. You'll notice animals here again, but on the side it says it's sci-fi and fantasy. So I wasn't really sure what I was getting myself into. When the book opens, we meet Willadine, the main character. Willadine's family was in a fire, and she lost her whole family. And Willadine now lives with May and Bertie, two older women from her village. Willadine has some quirks that are of her own. She likes to be alone. She loves nature. She doesn't really want to be in crowds or with a lot of people. And before her dad passed away, he would always take her and teach her to watch nature, to understand the relationship of all things and the balance in nature. Well, May and Bertie don't make her go to school. And so she wanders the hills up above her village. And this big creature you see here on the front with the horns, that's a screecher. This little tiny cute fella here, that is a humming bear. It's like a combination of a bear and a hummingbird. Yeah, it could like fit in your pocket. But the screecher here is seemingly nothing good. They smell terrible. They have these big tusks. They just like root things out of the ground. They take over the nests of other animals, and everyone in the village hates them. Well, the hummingbirds, on the other hand, form these beautiful bubble nests up in the blue willow trees. And the village has a fair every year, and a lot of their money comes from this fair when the hummingbirds come through and make these gorgeous nests. Well, every year, less and less of the hummingbirds are migrating back to their village. And no one's really sure why. But Willadine is observing nature and the balance. And with her and a friend she meets, Connor, who makes wooden puzzles of screechers, together some science fiction fantasy happens, and they end up doing some figuring out of what's going on in their village and what might be happening with the hummingbirds. This is a super fun book, and I think just about anyone would enjoy it. Check out Willadine by Katherine Applegate.
That sounds like a good one. I think those bears are quite adorable.
Oh, I want one. Hers was named Duzu, and he just cooed on her shoulder, and I wanted one the whole book I was reading. Yes.
That sounds amazing.
Yes.
I also have a sci-fi fantasy book to share with you. It's called Cici Rios and the Desert of Souls by Kayla Rivera. I listened to the audio of this book, and it was amazing. This is about 12-year-old Cici, who lives in a fictional place called Tierra del Sol with her family. And in the desert beyond her town are these criaturas that roam around. They're very dangerous, and they know that they can't come into town, and people should not go out there because who knows what could happen. They're dangerous creatures. Well, Cici's older sister is kidnapped by this dark creatura called El Sombreon, and it's up to Cici to get her back. She has to pretend to be a bruja, and she has to collect criaturas and make them fight each other. It's very Pokemon. If you like Pokemon, like that's what I was thinking the whole time. And she gets the help of these criaturas, and then she can enter the place where El Sombreon lives and rescue her sister back. So if you like sci-fi where there's creatures that you've never heard of before, there was a lot of Mexican mythology and also a lot of Spanish language in this book. So I really appreciated listening to it because I do not speak Spanish, and to hear those words pronounced correctly gave a lot to the story. But if you read the print book, there are vocabulary words in the back to help you with that pronunciation and to read more about the mythology itself. So it was very different from a lot of things that I'd read in sci-fi and fantasy before. It's always exciting to hear a different mythology, to hear about different stories from different cultures. And the creatures battling each other was very Pokemon. There's a lot of Pokemon in my house, so I could relate to that. But this book is available in print, in CD audiobook, ebook, and e-audiobook. So there's lots of ways to get a hold of Cici Rios and the Desert of Souls. Highly recommend that one.
Do you want to talk about Ophi's Ghost?
I kind of do.
They kind of pair up.
I kind of do.
I love this one too.
Oh my gosh.
I will just sit and pretend I'm reading it again for the first time.
Ophi's Ghost by Justina Ireland. I could not put this book down. Here, let me show you the cover. That's Ophelia. Ophi is what she goes by. And the story begins in Georgia in the 1920s, in the middle of the night. This is how the story opens. Cici, no, we're talking about Ophi now. Ophi is awakened in the middle of the night by her father, who tells her she needs to grab her emergency money out of the coffee can, which her family keeps in their house, and grab her mother and get out of the house. They just need to get out of the house. So she hurries and wakes up and gets her mom out of the house. Her father tells her there's a lynch mob on the way to their house, and they're going to burn their house. They have to get out. So they get out of the house. The lynch mob comes. They burn their house down. And so Ophi and her mother are sitting, and they're talking to the police. And she ask where her father went. She hasn't seen him since the fire. And the police tell her that her father died hours before the people came to burn their house.
Mm-hmm.
So we find just in the beginning chapter that Ophi can talk to ghosts. I was like shocked in the very first chapter. I had to read more about Ophi.
Yeah.
So Ophi and her mom, it's just the two of them now, they moved to Pennsylvania to live in a big, wealthy manor house and be servants because they really have no other way to make money. They have some family up there, so they live with them. Well, this manor house is full of ghosts. There's ghosts everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And Ophi helps them solve whatever problem is keeping them here and lets them move on. So they're no longer living in this house. But there's one ghost up in the attic, Clara, who doesn't know what happened to her. She doesn't know how she died. So then Ophi has a mystery to solve. So this book is historical fiction. It's sci-fi, because, well, paranormal, it's ghosts, and it's a mystery. It's so fantastic. It was such a good book. So Ophi is a great, strong, lovable character. I listened to the audio of this as well, and the narration was fantastic.
Really good. Yeah, great narration.
Justina Ireland also has a teen. I think there's only 2 in that series about zombies in post-Civil War time, which is great too. But this is her first J chapter book. Would highly recommend this to all readers. Very exciting. Lots going on. Ophi's Ghost by Justina.
Did you figure it out before the end?
You know, I had a feeling, but
yeah,
it honestly did take some turns that I did not see coming.
Yeah. I wasn't sure totally what was happening. The whole I wasn't there the whole time. I thought it was a good mystery.
It was a good mystery.
Yeah. And that was a mystery, was a surprise toward the end. Because you were like, oh, now we have something to solve. Yeah.
It was really good. I highly recommend.
Yes.
Ophi's Ghost. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you liked it too.
Yes, I loved it.
I've been recommending it all over town.
I am going to talk next about Caterpillar Summer, written by Gillian McDonald and published by Bloomsbury Children's Books. This book was brought to me by one of my own kids' teacher. She said, oh, I'm going to read this as a read aloud. And I was like, oh, I think I'll read it so I can see what's going on. I loved this book.
Teachers have the best ideas.
Oh, such a good idea. Yes. I love to get recommendations too. In this book, we meet Cat and Chicken. Those are not their real names, but they're the names they have always gone by. Cat is 11 and Chicken is 7. Their father passed away quite a few years ago, and Cat and Chicken's mom works all the time trying to, provide for their family. And Chicken is a handful. Chicken likes things the way he likes them. He has a shark that he has to have to keep him safe. He will run from Cat sometimes. And Cat is only 11, and she has the responsibility of taking care of her brother every day, all day. Meanwhile, their mom's job is interesting. I'm going to point it out because it's a fun part of Cat and Chicken. Their mom writes picture books, kids' picture books about 2 characters named Cat and Chicken. And so their exploits and things that happened on a daily basis with Cat and Chicken end up in picture books throughout the book. So that's kind of fun. So everything is going on. Cat's kind of feeling the weight of the world because her mom puts a lot on her. She's in charge of everything. And her mom has this big summer plan. She has to go to this writer's thing, and their care for the summer falls through. And her mom says, well, you 2 are going to have to go to my parents' house for 3 weeks this summer. And Cat and Chicken have never met their grandparents. So they're kind of like, what's going on? They're not sure why they've never met their grandparents. They don't know what happened before they were born, why maybe their mom doesn't contact her parents. And they end up on, it has a great name, they end up on Gingerbread Island.
Aww.
Where, isn't that good?
That's sweet.
Yeah, where their mom grew up. And Macon and Lily, their grandparents, welcome them with open arms. Kat is ready to take care of Caterpillar. Thank you very much. That's what she always does. She doesn't need any help, ready to take care of Chicken. She doesn't need any help. And Macon and Lily kind of like say, it's okay, you can go play. We got this. Both Chicken and Kat's lives change as they interact with their grandparents in good ways. It's a really exciting, fun adventure book about summer and how you can have an exciting adventure when you're 11 in the summer on Gingerbread Island. I think this book would go well with fans of The Remarkable Journey of Coyote Sunrise. It definitely has those like family things that are causing adventures to happen. Kids trying to understand adults, adults trying to understand kids. If you like that, you would probably love this book. This book has a lot of heart in all the feels. You'll notice she's fishing on the front. Her grandfather and her get involved in some fishing and kind of help pull her mom back into her family. Caterpillar Summer is a feel-good book with a lot of heart.
I love a feel-good. Well, I have some that are a little heavier than that.
It's time.
Okay.
Let's do it.
We're going to get into this. I'm going to share a couple more books with you. The first one is When the World Was Ours by Liz Kessler. And this is a story about three friends during just before World War II. They all live in Vienna, Max, Leo, and Elsa. And the story starts with them visiting a Ferris wheel on a very special day. It's a birthday. And they take a picture together and they each get a copy of the picture. And that is something that they carry with them throughout the whole book. So their whole world is turned upside down when World War II starts, and Leo and Elsa are Jewish, and Max's father is an SS officer. So we follow each of their stories throughout the war. They each go on a different journey. They are connected by this photo and this memory, and their lives do intersect during the book. But obviously, they go in very different directions. So this was a tough read. If you like World War II fiction, you will probably enjoy this book too. It had kind of an Alan Gratz writing style in that each chapter was a different character story.
Oh, I like that.
So alternating chapters.
Yeah, I always like that.
And of course, every chapter ends with a cliffhanger. So you have to wait for 2 more chapters to come back to that first story.
Okay.
So it's a different kind of writing style, but if you enjoy that, I think you would really like this story. It's a great book. It's hard to read. World War II fiction is hard to read. It doesn't sugarcoat anything. So I would recommend it to older chapter book readers. But it's a great book, available in print, ebook, and e-audio book. It's beautifully written. Liz Kessler is also the author of the Emily Winsnap series. If you've ever read
wow, that's
a
departure.
It really was a departure for her. But
that's great.
But it's a great story, great characters. And as a kind of a parallel to that, I'd also recommend The World in Between by Kenan Trebenchuk and Susan Shapiro. And this is a story about Kenan. He's 11 years old and he's living in Bosnia. It's a province of Yugoslavia when a war breaks out in his country. So he's a Muslim, and all of a sudden Muslims are on the wrong side of the war. So he and his family have been living here all his life. He's 11 now. His parents have good jobs and they're, important figures in the community. And all of a sudden they become trapped in their own house because it's dangerous to leave home. They can't be seen on the streets, and the electricity goes out, the water gets shut off. It's really it's a really dangerous situation for them at the time, and they have no way to get out. So they rely on a refugee organization to take them from Bosnia to Vienna, which is where that other story takes place. I know, I read them together, and they kind of went along with one another. So they go to Vienna for a little while, but they can't stay there either. And then they end up becoming refugees in Connecticut. So here he's lived all of his life. Maybe some of you have lived all of your lives in one spot. Then you're suddenly uprooted. They cannot take things with them because they don't know where they're going to end up. They have very little money and they only have the clothes on their back and what other people give them as refugees. So this happened, it's based on a true story. So Kenan is a real person. If you listen to the audiobook, you learn a little bit more about that. And then there are some pictures of him in the actual print book too. So, and this happened in the 90s. So it might sound like a long time ago to some kids right now, but it happened when I was a kid and I didn't really know much about it at the time. Sure. But it's kind of amazing that that happened and it was not that long ago. And it was very similar to what happened in World War II. So it was a great audiobook. I highly recommend it. It's available in print, ebook, and e-audiobook. I listened to it in just a couple of days because I really became invested in Kenan and I wanted to know what happened to him. So highly recommend World in Between.
So it's not a biography. It's based on a true story.
It's based on a true story. So he's a real person.
Okay.
And you learn a little bit more about him. Nice. But it's an incredible story. Really well written, really engaging.
Yeah.
Highly recommend.
I would love to read that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to talk just for a minute or two.
Are you?
I know.
Go for it. Go for it.
I know. Okay. So we were talking about this book before we started talking. This book, I love this book. It has not been loved by everybody. And what I want to mainly talk about, this book is called Amber and Clay, written by Laura Amy Schultz. And this is published by Candlewick Press. And the main thing I would want to tell someone to read about this is definitely for older chapter book readers, for sure. This is for the hardy.
Buckle up.
Yes. Liz said she tried to listen to it, and I think you could listen to it if you also had a copy in your hand, because the thing that I would tell you about this book is it's like nothing I've ever read before. I've never had a book like this in my hands before. It is Greek mythology. It has some Greek mythology in it, but it is told from so many voices. And even within the book, the story is told in tons of different ways. So when Liz said her book alone was told in verse, parts of this book are told in verse. Parts are told in chapters. Parts are told in pictures. And the voices change all the time. The main two characters are Rathscoth, who is a poor stable boy. His mom was a slave servant, and he wasn't going to ever really change. That was kind of his lot in life. And he gets taken away. His mom and him get separated. And it's about his journey through Greek life from a poor boy's perspective and what happens to him. And then the other character is Melistos, and she is a wealthy young girl, but does not have a good life. Her mom doesn't like her. And she is sent away to a ritual in the beginning of the book. I don't want to give anything away in this book, but the gods will talk in this book, and they're very, very snarky. They're funny. They often make fun of the humans for the things they're doing. The book, it just goes all over the place. This one is one you have to sit down with and be with for a while. I told Liz, I was like, I tried to read it, and then I was like, I need a couple of hours. I need to sit down and understand. One of my favorite things they do in here is they take pieces of archaeology, real pot shards, real things that have been found in archaeological digs, and they're in here. They're real. There's pictures of them, but they are tied into this fictional story somehow. It's kind of just this amazing historical fiction ride through writing. If you like Greek mythology and you're up for a good challenge, give Amber and Clay a chance. That's what I would say.
Okay.
I'd say give it a chance.
I'm an audiobook listener, so if the audio didn't grab me, I would move on to the next thing. But I have heard wonderful things about that book. I know people who have read it that have really loved it. So
it kind of just knocked me over because I was like, what is this? I don't understand.
That's what I thought when I was listening to it. I'm like, what is this? What am I listening
Yeah, it's like nothing else. It is for the hardy reader that wants to really be up for a good challenge. You will be rewarded.
Awesome.
Yes.
Well, thanks so much for listening.
I want to read most of her books that I haven't read, probably all the ones I haven't read.
Sure.
Yeah.
And we'll
just trade.
We'll trade. That would be great.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for
Bye.
Happy reading.
Woo.